So the other night, I was eating dinner and wanted something to watch, and The Real Housewives of Atlanta happened to be on. Now, I haven't seen this show in a while. Um, just in general, I've decided to sort of stay away from reality TV shows that are inherently like toxic in terms of the dynamics, because I realize that as a society, for us to be entertained by toxic people and toxic situations, like what does that say about us, right? Like, as long as there's that demand, these networks will keep supplying it, right? So I realize that as a viewer, I'm a problem. I'm part of the problem if I'm watching these shows. Anyway, it happened to be on. I thought, let me just watch this episode. And the scene that I stumbled into as I was eating dinner was ironically also a dinner scene between this couple. And I guess this is a new cast member of the show, this woman named Drew. And so she's having dinner with her husband. And it was, I think, the most uncomfortable reality TV scene I've ever witnessed in terms of like the psychology of it. He was gaslighting her the entire dinner. The entire dinner. He set up this, nice, lavish, expensive dinner. But she was like, this is all really nice, but I feel like we have to talk about our issues, which to me seemed like a very reasonable thing to say. Like, this is all fluff. I want to get to the core of our issues. And he was instantly like defensive, very critical of her, putting her down. She ends up crying, walking away from the table. And there was a scene where a producer is asking her if she thinks he's gaslighting her, and she didn't even know what that was. And then she looked it up and she was like, oh, this sounds a lot like him. So it's like she could process that she knows that something's not right in her relationship, but she's still in it. And they have kids, so it's like, whole complicated thing. Like, he already has her trapped, so to speak. Anyway, I was watching this scene feeling so uncomfortable. Then I went on social media. I went on Reddit and saw that people hate her husband from this show, and people are always saying that he's gaslighting her and that she's like a victim in the marriage. And it reminded me of the guy that I've talked about before on this channel, made a video or two about this. Ironically, also lives in Atlanta. The guy that I had my situation with. And there were parallels between this guy on camera and the guy that I went to visit in Atlanta for a weekend. It was like one of the worst weekends of my life, maybe the worst weekend I've ever had in my life, where the same thing, the guy gaslit me the entire weekend. So maybe that's also why I was very uncomfortable, because it felt very familiar. But I had this epiphany watching the show, which is, it's easy to look at her as like a victim, like, oh, like I feel so bad for her. But the thing is, for her to not trust her instincts and to still be trapped in this dynamic, what I realized is she's attracted to this guy on paper. She's attracted to the idea of her husband, not the reality of her husband. And I realized that because I was thinking about my own situation. And for those of you who are like, what are you talking about? A few years ago, made the video. So just, if you're interested in watching it, type in the search box of my channel, sociopath or like narcissist, and it'll come up. Because he was a textbook narcissist, just like this guy from Real Housewives of Atlanta. And I didn't know it at the time, but like once you have that education of like, what the cues are and what to look for, it becomes clear as day. So this goes back to this saying that I've been saying a lot lately, which I made up, by the way, this saying. When you have superficial values, you get superficial results. Meaning, in this case, when you're attracted to the idea of somebody and how they present themselves versus the reality of who they are, that's an issue. Like that's an issue in your priorities. And so with my guy, the situation I had, like on paper, he was handsome, successful, educated, refined. But once I spent a weekend with him, 48 hours straight with him, he was such a nightmare. And I was like, none of this stuff matters. None of the education or the success or the physical, none of it matters if you're a shitty person. So at least me, I woke up like somewhat quickly to it and just got out of it. And, worst case, I wasted a weekend of my life with this shitty person. If that ever happens again, I will know within the first, few hours now to trust my instincts instead of spending an entire weekend with someone. But I look at this woman from the Real Housewives of Atlanta, and I'm like, how do you ignore the red flags for so long? And during this dinner scene, you can tell she's picking up on all the red flags. Like, he says at one point that he wants to send her back to their therapist so that she learns how to speak to men like him. And she catches it in the moment, and she's like, well, maybe I should send you back to the therapist so that you learn how to speak to women like me. So she served it right back to him. And of course, he instantly is like, you're ruining the dinner. You're ruining my date. Like, why do I do thoughtful things like this for you? Just a total jerk, just a total glib, narcissistic, emotionally immature jerk. So she picks up on it and she cries. At one point, she says something really interesting. She says, I feel like I always walk on eggshells around you. So it's like she's saying it, she's verbalizing it, she feels it, but she still has blinders. It's like she doesn't want to fully believe it. So she walks away crying, and of course a part of me sympathizes with her, but again, another part of me is like, the only thing that's holding you here, other than now, of course, the fact that she has kids with him, which is a whole other thing, but you allowed yourself to be fooled into the glibness of this person. Curious what you guys think about this.